All right, so it's 6 o'clock and we have a quorum, so we will get started and I'll call this meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for joining the August 1st edition of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight on the agenda, we have one letter of recommendation, 4 information reports, and 2 other items. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Hofree, Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Broyles,
Here.
Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Deppler, Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Beatty,
Here.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
Mayor Bowling.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get or does the department, right, can I get an approval of the minutes from July 18th?
I so move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain.
All right, abstention by Councilman Brost. Beyond that, motion carries. Thank you. Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
No, sir, Mr. Chair, but thank you.
Thank you. So with that, next we'll have the public comment session. If there's anyone in attendance who would like to speak on anything before on the agenda tonight, now is your chance. So please use the raise hand feature on Zoom and I will promote you to a panelist, and you can say your comments into the record then.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the department will keep a clock on the comments. Commenters are given up to 5 minutes. I'll make note at 4 minutes to let them know that they're closing in on their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone raise their hands. Give it another minute or so. Does not appear anyone is interested in speaking tonight. So no public hearings. So first on the agenda, PZ 7-22, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 7-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860, Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible additions or changes to the regulations that are associated with Chapter 415.030 definitions, Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban residence district, Chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district, Chapter 415.120 R1A 22,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.130 R2 15,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.140 R3 10,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.150 R4 7,500 square foot residence district, and Chapter 415.160 R6A 4,500 square foot residence district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, which would consider better defining current regulations while potentially introducing new requirements relative to the installation and maintenance of fences throughout this community to ensure limited impacts on adjoining property owners, as well as addressing safety considerations for the same. All words.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Ms. Ripito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for you for your consideration a draft letter of recommendation on the matter just read into record. At the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission voted 9-0 to grant a request for modifications to the city's fence regulations. The Department of Planning has prepared this letter of recommendation based on the recommendations made by extensive discussion at the Planning and Parks Committee and supported by the City Council. These additions include minimal regulations intended primarily for the safety and aesthetics regarding front yard fences and those areas that might not be addressed by indentures or overlays or plan districts. These changes also allow for some exceptions to deer fencing that weren't previously allowed. The department would note that these changes would not prevent homeowners association indentures from further regulating and also regulations by St. Louis County. They would also not affect fences currently in existence until they would be replaced. Those would be considered legal nonconformities. Therefore, the letter of recommendation notes that the commission believes that this approach and the accompanying changes to the city's fence regulations offer a good balance between the concern of overregulating while also ensuring the needed protections are in place for property owners and the city. Therefore, this draft letter of recommendation is ready for consideration and final action tonight and is formatted to be forwarded to the City Council. If there are any questions, Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry, and I are here to answer any of them. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Is there any discussion or motion? Commissioner Cohn?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the department's recommendation.
All right, motion and second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none.
I
Oh,
I have a
sorry.
question. So, okay, we're not, if a person already has the fence in place, we're not mandating that they change it. However, if they were going to replace the fence, like down the road, if they'll start falling down, they want to replace it, would they then be under the criteria we've set, or can they just replace the same kind of fence that they had?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so any fences currently in existence would be allowed to exist as they are, but if they went to replace them, they would have to replace them meeting the regulations as they are that day, or they could seek a variance from the Board of Adjustment if needed.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Jackson?
So just to be clear, so we're grandfathering everyone in essentially that has an existing fence.
Yes, they'd be considered a legal nonconformity, and so they would be allowed to exist as they are until replacement.
And there's no exceptions when you do this. I mean, you pretty much have to do that because there are certain types of fencing and et cetera that may be an issue, but I'm not sure. And there wouldn't be anything you can do. It's basically until it's tore down. Is that correct?
That is correct. If it was installed at the time that it met our regulations, then it would be allowed to exist until it was replaced.
Okay. Well, that fence that I mentioned during this discussion along with Fox Creek or whatever, a lot of people are pretty upset about that fence. I didn't know it. I just mentioned it because I thought it was very unique, but it came back there. That's a very interesting sort of scenario there. So anyway, enough said. If we got to do it, we got to do it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cohn?
Just for example, let's say I have an existing fence that's 100-foot long and I need to replace 10, 15, 20 feet of it. Is that okay?
As the regulations are written, I generally, when it comes down to it, if you're repairing your fence, then that's considered a repair and not a replacement. And so it wouldn't necessarily be applicable if you're going to replace more than 50% of the fence, then it's generally considered replacement as opposed to repair. I would defer to Mr. Vunich if I am misspeaking here.
So basically, I can repair 20 feet at a time, 5 years in a row. Thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. So when I lived in Baldwin, I had a house that had very small windows. You had no egress, right? But they were grandfathered in. The windows became non-functional. So the rules on that were you could replace it, but you had to go back exactly with the exact same type of window. If you made any modifications on a full replacement, it had to be approved. It had to meet fire code 3 foot long wide, where you could climb out of it, etc. So applying that principle, if an entire fence had to be replaced, would they be able to go back exactly? You could go exactly with what you have with no issues. But if you make any changes on a full replacement, it would have to go through approvals. Would that be an accurate statement?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So as far as that's concerned, if they wanted to go back in with the exact same fence in the exact same place, but we're replacing the entire fence, they could appeal to the Board of Adjustment for a variance to the regulations, but not necessarily replace the fence where it is. Generally, when it comes to updating building standards, building codes, fence regulations and such, it's a moving forward type situation as the regulations change.
Okay, I was just kind of curious. I mean, we got to do this. So.
Sure.
Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention in general that this is something that is, I believe, really important for our city. I think we've probably all either experienced firsthand or know someone who's experienced firsthand a situation where a fence was very visible to our residents and or you in your subdivisions, and was constructed, and there was simply no way, there was opposition to it, and there was no way for anyone to really do anything about it, and that opposition was valid. I could give you any number of different hypotheticals that you would probably not want to see anywhere in your area or in our city as a whole. So I would encourage and support fully the passage of these new regulations. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? We do have a motion and a second, so roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, PZ 1-22, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 1-22, Kurt's Nursery, 2312 Steamboat Hollow Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. Care of Edward Griesdick, EJG Legal Consulting, LLC, 5 Indian Creek Lane, St. Louis, Missouri, 63131. A request for a change in zoning from the M3 Planned Industrial District to the amended M3 Planned Industrial District upon a tract of land that is 15.44 acres in size, which is located on the west side of North Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Centaur Road. Street address 495 North Etherton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 18X640024. Proposed uses: a mulch storage and processing facility, composting of a range of landscape materials, agricultural and horticultural operations, landscape and maintenance operations, along with forestry and timber processing and accessory sales of products. Ward 1.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with its recommendation. That recommendation is supportive of the change in zoning from the M3 Planned Industrial District to the amended M3 Planned Industrial District. The proposed use and the components of that use are consistent with an existing activity that is on an abutting parcel of ground that has been in the city for almost 20 plus years. In the report, the department does note that the property is designated under the city's master plan, conceptual land use categories, industrial. And as part of that, any permitted activities in the M1 industrial district are authorized. Amongst those activities identified in that M1 industrial district are many of those that are part of this proposal. Again, surrounding land use indicates that this is an appropriate type use. The master plan supports it, and many of the design criteria are consistent with what has been successful for the neighbor that operates a very similar operation. As part of the information report, the department has identified a number of conditions that it expects the owner, developer of the property to comply with. These conditions, again, are consistent with an activity of this nature. Today, you were forwarded a letter from petitioner's representative identifying 4 of those. One related to setback distance from North Etherton Road, another, the building sizes, a third, a roadway issue relative to North Etherton Road, again, a county arterial, and then finally, the impact of the traffic generation assessment fee. I would note part of the reason for the rezoning request and urged by the department is the fact that the original ordinance was from 1970, 1971 period. That ordinance did not contain many of the requirements that Wildwood sets forth today, one of which is the traffic generation assessment fee. It is a fee that's integral to road improvements in the vicinity of the site and in the western portion of the TGA fund. So from the perspective of the department, it feels like it's been consistent in treating this particular property similar to the other that abuts it to the north and west. So tonight you have a favorable recommendation with conditions. Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I are available to comment or respond to questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Is there any discussion or questions from the panel? Ms. Commissioner Cohn. You're muted.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the city's recommendations, the department's recommendations.
All right, motion by Commissioner Cohn, seconded by Commissioner Broyles. Any discussion? So reading those comments, I guess particularly the first two, is the petitioner asking for anything out of line?
In terms of the first two, certainly the department uses the preliminary development plan to create the specifics for each of the conditions in attachment B. The department used the preliminary development plan to come up with the building sizes. Certainly those can be adjusted. I don't believe they're inappropriate requests given the size of the lot, again, over 10 acres in size. And then with regards to the setback, the water management features, I do not believe are in the county's right of way. So when they were identified as 80 feet in width, that's the setback the department established. So we'll verify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say, I think some of the issues, and perhaps all of those that were raised in the letter that we were sent late today, may or may not be valid, but I think that given the intricacies of a project of this size, we really have to trust the department. And so I would support the motion, and that would be done with the understanding that Joe and his team would, if it is deemed appropriate within the scope of what is best for the city and the neighboring landowners to adjust things, they can. But ultimately, the motion on the floor is to approve the department's recommendation, and I fully support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Motion. Thank you. Motion carries. All right. Next on the agenda, PZ 5-22. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 5-22, New Community Church, care of Peter Schwartz, Vessel Architecture, 600 Emerson Road, Suite 401, Creve Coeur, Missouri 63141. A request for a change in zoning from the C8 Planned Commercial District to the amended C8 Planned Commercial District upon a tract of land that is 4.08 acres in size, which is located on the south side of Manchester Road, west of Taylor Road. Street addresses 16830, 16832, 16832A, and 16840 Manchester Road, St. Louis County. Locator numbers 24V630352, 24V630011, 24V610068, and 24V520202. Accompanying this request is a request for a conditional use permit for the same tract of land identified herein, which would allow for the use of it for an expanded parking area for new community church and recreational activities associated with it as well. The subject tract of land is designated the Workplace District under the current Town Center Regulating Plan as adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 7, 2021. Property is located within Ward 8.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, as with the past item just discussed, the department has prepared for your consideration its information report with recommendation regarding the request that was just recited into the record by Mr. Newberry. The department's recommendation in this regard is to support the amendment of the current C8 Plan Commercial District to accommodate the additional parking in support of new community church, as well as provide it with a recreational amenities that cannot be accommodated on their current site due to the amount of parking, building space, and what the department believes topography. In the report, the department has established a number of conditions relating to that favorable recommendation, some of which are very consistent with the preliminary development plan that has been provided by the petitioner. But the department does want to identify several that it believes will require further thought on the design to accommodate what the department would believe is the best use of the property with least impact to neighbors. Those items specifically are as follows. The proximity of the parking to Manchester Road is of a key concern in that there must be some type of permanent screening to address the visual aspects of a parking lot relative to the completed and very nice streetscape. In the town center, the neighborhood design centers speak of a garden wall or something of a similar nature. The intent is to not mandate a garden wall, but the condition does provide flexibility based upon the review of the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of the site development plan. The next two items are kind of in combination or in conjunction. The bioretention basin is substantial in size and does require grading not only on the buildable area of the site, but into two of the setback areas. To accommodate it as well, almost all of the existing tree mass is removed. That tree mass provides an effective screen to the residential properties to the south. The department offers some options relative to the size of the bioretention basin, which could correspondingly save some of that tree mass. Those include more pervious surfaces, rain gardens elsewhere on the site, etc. So again, it is an item that the department believes needs further study by the applicant. Finally, there are some items relating to that southern boundary line, which does adjoin the only residential setting in the vicinity of this particular site. The department is asking for some additional landscaping with the tree removal and the placement of the trail and open play area in that particular vicinity of the site, as well as to address potential issues with trespass. Collectively, though, the department does believe that the design is functional, safe, and will have minimal impact if the conditions can be met as described. So therefore, tonight you have a favorable recommendation as identified in the department's report. After a motion and second, or the chair opening the floor to discussion, the department will do its best to answer any questions and respond to comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Cohn?
If we approve this, are they required to put in the parking as well as the recreational area? Does that all have to go in?
No, Mr. Cohn. What would transpire is that the site development plan would be required and the parking ratios would be premised on what's being constructed in the recreational area. So in that regard, there may be less spaces required at first, and certainly then could be added on based upon need, either from the church itself or the use of the facilities.
So there's no requirement to build the recreational areas if they just chose to do parking.
Mr. Cohn, in early meetings with New Community Church, they actually talked about potentially phasing this particular project, starting with the parking, which may be the immediate need given the growing congregation size, and then following up with the recreational amenities. Phasing can be accommodated under this recommendation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
And do they give a projected timeline in terms of when they would start with the parking? I know, getting the parking and all the lands, is there, this be done in a year? Do they have any kind of projected timeline?
The department has tried to make a commitment to New Community Church to have the zoning matters, if favorable, complete by the beginning of September. Then the preliminary development plan becomes the site development plan. Then there's construction drawings. So from that perspective, it could be well into 2023, the beginning of 2023, before a grading permit could be issued in this regard. My impression, again, is that the parking was the primary purpose of the purchase of the ground. But again, like most places of worship, they have recreational space, and that is limited on the current site. Again, because the current site, it was originally developed as a dinner theater, then a restaurant, then finally a church. So it's a positive for them, and certainly I believe for this particular area of Wildwood.
Any other discussion or motion? Commissioner Broyles?
This question is for Mr. Vunich. This bioretention area, how much of that 4.08 acres does that take up in space?
I do not have the exact figure to provide to you. I didn't think to calculate that. But as you can see from the plan that was provided, getting to that plan.
And also, Mr. Vunich, is that nearer the back of that property, that 4+ acres?
Yes, it borders the southeastern corner of the property and also is in that notch formed by one of the 4 properties that comprise this overall parcel of ground. But as you can see, it is substantial in size. And I would estimate that it's anywhere from 15 to 20,000 square feet, if not more.
And how would that be? Would that just be left open, or is it covered, that retention area?
It's an open bioretention basin, so it's not covered. And there'll be plantings on the inside of the bioretention area. But as you can see, to make it work on this particular site, the slopes are somewhat steep. And again, it'll be more of just a visual aspect, but the proposed design does show the trail working its way in and around it.
Oh, okay. So they do have some design ideas. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Bullen?
Motion to approve the recommendation as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, PZ 8-22, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 8-22, 2418 Etherton Road, care of Michael Miners, St. Charles Engineering and Survey Incorporated, 801 South 5th Street, Suite 202, St. Charles, Missouri 63301. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban resident district to the R3 10,000 square foot resident district upon a property that is 0.72 acres in size, which is located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Crestview Drive. Locator number 23V 210063, street address 2418 Etherton Road. The subject property is designated the Neighborhood General District under the current Town Center Regulating Plan as adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 7, 2021. This property is located in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
Mr. Chair, I would just note that Mayor Boland has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to call on him as soon as you read that.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, would you like me to give a presentation or would you like the mayor to speak?
He's saying you can go ahead and give your presentation.
I understand. Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry for the confusion. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is prepared for your consideration, recommendation, information report with recommendation for the requested change in zoning that was just read into the record. The subject property is located within the city's town center area. It's currently zoned the NU non-urban residence district, and the requested change in zoning is to the R3 10,000 square foot resident district. The town center update, or the update to the town center plan that occurred in recent years, this property was part of a set of properties that the town center update team considered and ultimately recommended to change their designation from the downtown district to the neighborhood general district. This has prompted the request for the change in zoning for a residential district more consistent with the newly established neighborhood general district. The department has reviewed the requested change in zoning and does believe that it's as appropriate and is recommending its approval because it is consistent with the master plan and the town center plan. The department did want to note that as part of the formulation of its recommendation report, a table was created that outline other or existing requirements, standards, and guidelines that are in place under the town center plan, its architectural guidelines, neighborhood design standards, as well as the subdivision and development regulations and the zoning code of the city of Wildwood. That table addresses several items. There are just a few that the department wanted to highlight briefly as part of its presentation. The requested change in zoning with these existing regulations, the subdivision and development regulations and the zoning code, the assessment of the department is that there would be no more than 2 lots created at this location. Additionally, the town center requirements, the recommendation of the department is based on the requirement that the garage design be of a side entry or rear entry type. Also in the department's report, there's an emphasis on the importance of the tree preservation on the site, which was brought up by a speaker at the public hearing. And then the department also would want to note that it worked with the Department of Public Works to establish a required dedication along Etherton Road for future roadway improvements, that being an area of up to 20 feet along the frontage of the property. And with that, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department again is recommending approval of the requested change in zoning, and the department's available for any questions if commission members have them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to postpone to the next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission so that we could get additional information on 2 things. First, we've had comments relative to the need for buffering between the Canterbury subdivision and Highway 100 where this is located, particularly not only for aesthetics, but also because of noise, to the extent that that buffering can occur from either dirt mounds and or vegetation. And secondly, the back entry garages on such a small tract being allowed to have the number of homes, I'd like to see, I guess, an elevation of how that's going to look, particularly from Highway 1, frankly, in all directions, because other property around it could be developed. And so, but at the moment, particularly from the perspective in order of priority, Highway 100 and the Canberry subdivision. So my motion is to postpone for those reasons. Thank you. And this is, if I can just mention, so the restoration, the tree preservation restoration is mentioned in item 6 in the table Travis mentioned, but I'm not seeing some data and information relative to the buffering that I mentioned as item 1. So those are the two reasons for my motion to postpone. Thanks.
All right, seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion is postponed.
That was an aye by me as well. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So technically the matter is postponed. I don't think there was a motion on the floor. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
No worries.
So let's see. So next on the agenda, PZ 9-22, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 9-22-2545 Etherton Road, care of Robert and Laura Busby, 8 Black Wolf Run Court, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. Request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district and C2 shopping district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district upon a property that is 1.05 acres in size, which is located on the west side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Manchester Road. Locator number 24B 530-661, street address 2545 Etherton Road. The subject property is designated the Neighborhood General District under the current Town Center Regulating Plan as adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 7, 2021. Property is located in Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Ms. Ripito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with recommendation for the request that was just read into record. The petitioners, Robert and Laura Busby, are seeking to change zoning to allow for the development of a 1.05 acre lot in order to construct one single family dwelling. Included in your packet is the boundary adjustment plat recently approved by the city earlier this year, I believe in April of 2022. The department would note that the city's master plan's land use description of the town center area states that R3 10,000 square foot residence district is an acceptable zoning district designation for this location, and the density of this individual lot will be lower than the zoning classification allows. Therefore, it can be favorably considered without the inclusion of the planned residential development overlay district. Because this property is located in town center, the neighborhood design standards and architectural guidelines would be applied to ensure the new urbanism character. The department would also note that this lot does not currently meet the 3 acre minimum requirement of the non-urban residence district. Rezoning this to R3 10,000 square foot district would eliminate that nonconformity. Additionally, this lot currently has 2 zoning designations. It's primarily non-urban, with a small area on the southern part of the property that's zoned C2 shopping district. The department would also note that there is a similar table as in the previous presentation that includes additional requirements, which would also include a dedication of up to 20 feet for the right-of-way. Therefore, in summary, the proposed single-family home is consistent with the requirements of the city's master plan and regulating plan of town center, both in terms of lot size, setbacks, and other requirements. The integration of the city's land use codes would create further framework to ensure the design and character of the dwelling would be consistent. And lastly, the rezoning of this property would eliminate the existing nonconformity in regards to the size of the lot and would also eliminate the issue of the subject property having 2 zoning designations. So given the nature of this request, the Department of Planning is recommending favorable consideration of rezoning from non-urban residence district and the C2 shopping district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for this 1.05 acre tract of land. And with that, Mr. Chair, the department concludes its presentation. However, Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry, and I are available to answer any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Any discussion or motion? Commissioner or Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Any further, Mayor Bolin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. I'm having difficulty or have had difficulty looking at the PDF that was provided as to determining exactly where this property is located, and specifically number one, and number two, relative to the 3 acre minimum, what is 3 acres and what isn't, given that we've got two different parcels here. So can someone please answer those questions? Thank you.
If I may,
Ms.
Mr. Chair.
Ripito? Yeah.
Thank you. As you can see from the map that Mr. Newberry has provided, the subject property is highlighted in blue. So that would be the subject property that would be rezoned. And it is 1.05 acres. It's just north of Manchester on the west side of Atherton. Does that help clarify where it's at and what exactly would be rezoned?
I see your, if I may through the chair, I do see your cursor. I happen to be very colorblind. I can't tell colors, and I think that's part of the problem. So if we could, that's fine. So if we could just go to what is 3 acres and what isn't with respect to this particular parcel.
This parcel is just 1.05 acres. The property across the street might be close to 3 acres, but I mean, across the street and to the north a bit, but I'm not positive on the size of that. The lots in that area vary quite a bit. The lots directly across the street are less than half an acre. They're about 0.40 acres on the larger ones, and the smaller ones I think are closer to 1/4 of an acre. So they do vary quite a bit in that area.
I'm sorry. My question was, I thought that I heard you say that this was zone non-urban 3 acre minimum, and this would change that. So what is, if that's okay, then what is this? Is it the entire demarcated property or only part of it?
It would be the entire property to an R3 10,000 square foot residence district.
Okay.
From both non-urban and commercial.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, it's surrounded by much smaller parcels. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is right in the middle of the town center, just north of Manchester and Atherton. Commissioner Jackson?
I'm sure it was said, I just want to confirm, they have access to public sewage.
Correct.
Okay, done, fine, thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes,
Commissioner Ward,
Yes,
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Bolin.
Before I vote, I'd like to ask one more question, please.
Yes, sir.
The designation is non-urban. Is that a designation that continued as following the recent, relatively recent town center update team recommendations?
I would defer to Mr. Vunich to answer this question if you don't mind. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this was one of the areas where St. Louis County in 1965 just took a broad brush stroke and designated everything pretty much west of Lindbergh Boulevard, NU non-urban district. And that has survived through St. Louis County and now through the city of Wildwood. I would just note that when the town center update team met, they basically designated this neighborhood general versus a workplace district, a commercial district, thinking that residential was preferred here.
So the implication of that being, did the town center update team support this being 3 acre minimum continuation or something lesser?
Something lesser, sir.
Okay, my vote is yes. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda. Let's see. We have the nominating committee's recommendation for the 2022-2023 commission year and its officers. So last week, Commissioner Helfrey, Commissioner Deppler and I met and came up with a recommendation for the officers of the next year to be the same as this year. I will continue to be chair. Commissioner Cohn will continue to be vice chair, and Commissioner Helfrey will be secretary. If there's any discussion or a motion on that.
Motion to approve.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Abstain.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, I thought you already asked me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mark. I apologize. Chair Beatty,
Abstain.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes, and not to throw a wrench into this, but as a matter of procedure, given the abstentions, can we make sure from the city attorney that we have the necessary votes of commissioners and we had some abstentions?
I think you cut out Mayor Boland, right?
I'm sorry. I just was saying not to throw a wrench into this. My vote would be yes. I just want to make sure from our city attorney that given the fact that we are missing a couple of commissioners at the meeting and we had a couple of abstentions, that the motion has the requisite number of commissioners to legally pass. That's my question.
Travis, how many votes were voted yes?
Mr. Young, the vote was 6-0 with 2 abstentions and 2 absent.
Mayor, that's a sufficient number.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the vote of confidence. Next on the agenda, the summary sheet of tree preservation and restoration code highlights for the upcoming work session. Mr. Newberry or Mr. Vinich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is just a summary sheet in preparation of our work session in 2 weeks, just to kind of remind you of the things we've been doing and the things we're going to talk about. If there's any questions, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, or I'd be glad to try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Broyles?
Could you just briefly highlight that for me? What we're going to be discussing?
Well, Ms. Broyles, as you know from our public hearing, but it's a long time ago, our tree preservation and restoration code has been updated a couple of times since its adoption in 1996, but those have not been comprehensive. They were not part of what I would consider a comprehensive review. They were in response to problems we noticed. The intent of this is a comprehensive review, and for the most part, we're going to look at the definitions, which have changed dramatically in the arborist community. We're going to look at our landscape manual, which has not been updated since 1996. And we're going to try to make the sustainable planning guide a little more user-friendly. It's about 150 pages, and I don't know, other than maybe a few people here in the Department of Planning use it regularly. So those are the key components. And then there's just some information we got from our arborist, who is our contractor, Davy Resource Group, that, there's just better ways to do things than what we described now.
Thank you for highlighting that.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. Mayor Bolin?
Just a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank you, Chair Beatty, and Commissioner Khan, and the others who have agreed to fill the officer, positions of the commission. It does take a lot of time to do those things. And I just want you to know on behalf of all of us, I'm sure we appreciate it. And similarly, I want to thank our city team members, our city administrator, Joe, Travis, Melanie, for all that they do, because just imagine what this meeting would be like without all of their excellent reports and due diligence that they do before it. So sometimes we forget to say thank you, and I forget to say thank you, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a question on some old business, since that was on the agenda, any old business? We were talking about city inspection at some point. If that's not the will of P&Z to continue down that path, I just wondering if that's been tabled or where we're at with that.
Commissioner Jackson, that report from the Planning and Zoning Commission was forwarded to City Council. City Council asked the city attorney and the department to do some investigation on it, and we are doing that right now. I would suspect sometime in the mid-fall, you'll have something back to you.
Okay, so that's perfect. And in my mind, there's a lot of reasons for, and I know that's always like a delicate issue, especially like the renewables. I'm just concerned about those being maintained, and the only way you can do that when a house is sold. And then also there's the things that aren't code, electric lines that aren't raised up high enough. I mean, a lot of older houses, things of that nature, occupancy, that would be public safety interest. And those would be like the no-brainer part. And then there's the delicate issues. And so I think with city council, just, I think that's the appropriate place for it to be. I appreciate the update. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
There's your motion to adjourn right here. There you go, buddy.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Second by Commissioner Ward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we are adjourned. All right, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you
Have a
all.
good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.